All right. Welcome to a Project Voice pre-event interview. I am here with Daniel Hill, and Daniel was a part of our event last year when it was called Project the Voice Alexa Conference, and now it's being expanded, right? It's a huge conference for the voice tech industry and the AI industry. It'll be happening January 13th through the 17th in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Daniel was a big part of it last year. Also, he was a big part of Pete Erickson's event, the Voice Summit over in New Jersey. And so we're really grateful, Daniel, to have you with us again as a speaker and as a content creator, creating lots of opportunity for the speakers, sponsors, and attendees there. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do with Daniel Hill Media?
Sure. So I'm Daniel Hill. I am a content creator. I run Daniel Hill Media, and I help people not only use new technologies, but also use them to build audiences. That's specifically what I focus on, helping people do in this environment.
And so you do quite a bit of public speaking. You focus a lot on the voice tech industry and specifically on flash briefings. And that's because you create a flash briefing and have had a lot of success with that. Could you talk a bit about your experience with Amazon Alexa's flash briefings and why that's become not just a big part of your content output, but also a thing that you're helping others in this industry to investigate, build strategies around, and then do a great job with?
Sure. Thanks for that introduction. That was great. So one of the things that has interested me for a long time is podcasting, and I've had a podcast, but there's some inherent challenges there because doing it weekly, I'm the sort of person, and this is just me, but it's easier for me to go to the gym every single day than it is to go 3 times a week, because if you're in the habit of doing something every day, then you're going to stick to it, and that's your time for it. And so for me, one of my friends told me, Dan, you should really look into this flash briefings, and I didn't know what it was, and I asked my friends, do you have Echo units? And like not really a lot of people did, but as I started to explore, I realized that if you have something that you're knowledgeable about that you can talk about on a regular basis daily and you can bring value, there are people who want to hear small bite-sized pieces of information as part of their daily intake, whether it's while they're driving or making breakfast or whatever, and you can be part of their lives. Social media gives you that opportunity, but right now it's really, really crowded, right? You could send an email newsletter. Email is really, really crowded. This right now is not crowded, so it's really worth your time to figure out how to build an audience on a platform that not a lot of people are hitting very hard in terms of marketing.
Well, one thing I've noticed about you, Daniel, is that you're doing a great job with the platforms where people are already at, right? People are already on LinkedIn, right? They're already on Instagram, they're already on Twitter, they're already on Facebook, and you have consistently been creating the type of content that those audiences deeply crave. But you're not satisfied with just being where people are at. You're also trying to be ahead of the curve and specifically be where people will be more and more and more. And we understand the power of these voice devices. It's the fastest growing hardware piece of technology in the history of things that we've tracked, right? Faster growing than smartphones, certainly way faster than TVs or radio, things of that nature. And so it's nice to see you still consistently doing things like Instagram stories, right? It's through your stories that your friends laugh, for one, because you're very funny. And we find out all sorts of things, like how tolerant your wife is as you're singing.
Wow, you know me really well. Yeah.
Or that you hurt your
really
hand. How is your hand healing up?
It's been a couple of years. It's been fine. It's funny because I love stories because it's so disposable, right? Like if you see it in the moment, then you're there and it's like you're with me on whatever I'm doing as part of my journey. And it's funny because the micro content, the flash briefings are sort of the same thing. You only have that same 24-hour period. So there's a connection, right? Here's 24 hours, here's 24 hours. How do you make the most of it in that time period? And so, yeah, that's one of the things. You get to see all the behind the scenes of my wife tolerating all the ridiculous things that I do.
Now, for when you think about Instagram stories for yourself personally, but then you think to apply it to like Project Voice. So you'll be there. The event is January 13th through the 17th. Obviously the 13th is kind of day zero. The real event really heats up Tuesday, January 14th in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You'll be with us on Tuesday and Wednesday into Thursday morning. and you'll be creating a lot of content on Instagram stories and other platforms. And so when you approach creating content for an event, specifically to give another platform to the sponsors that make that event happen and the speakers that draw the attendees, how do you approach something like Instagram stories in an event, or just creating content? You'll probably take some of the content you create and create more flash briefings. When you think about creating this content in context of a conference like Project Voice, how do you approach that differently than yourself at your house or on the road or in between meetings? What's the different approach for you as a strategist?
Yeah, it becomes a lot more serious in those respects, but it's also good because people have come to sort of check in with you, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, throughout the day at times that their work life or their school life is a little slow, right? So in their downtime, they're on lunch for a few minutes, the way they might have picked up the newspaper, now they're like, let me look through my Instagram, through my Twitter, and see what my friends, what people are doing around me. And if it's a chance where you can make them laugh, or you can teach them something, it's going to be really, really valuable. So for me, one of the things I've noticed for my own audience is it's a great way to give them a tiny bit of exposure to what I do in my work life without boring them, but just in a tiny bite-sized chunk. So if I share something about what's going on in the Amazon ecosystem, someone might have an Echo Dot and not even know very much about what they can do. Maybe they know flash briefings, but if they pick up one little tip and I can either take a picture and write some text on it to give it context, or explain a speaker and what he said that's really valuable and why it's so important, and give the little 360-degree view of why that matters to make it relevant, it gives people information in a very bite-sized chunk that they can really manage, because chances are they're not going to sit down and read a long book about it, or maybe even a long blog post. But that 10-second, whatever it is, that can really kind of help them to recognize that I'm an expert in that area, or that I'm staying on top of all the newest technologies so that I can be an expert, and they can come to me with questions.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, you're not just a video guy or a podcaster. You also put forth quite a bit of effort in writing good copy and creating written content. An example would be you created one of the great summaries of the Alexa conference last year on LinkedIn. You also created a wonderful summary on the Voice Summit that happened in New Jersey. And so for you, how do you balance as a person that's creating content for these events and creating space for people to be heard as you interview them? How do you balance the approach of like, okay, I have a camera, I'm going video, or hey, I'm going to just record some audio, or no, this really deserves time for me to sit down and really develop an actual article that can be read? How do you broach content in the video, audio, written outputs?
It's funny. I think you have to take turns. At least I do. I have a friend who's a wedding photographer, and I asked her, we were talking about vacation one time, and I said, I always struggle with if I should make videos on vacation or take pictures or what. And she said, what I do is I segment days. So one day I'll just do all pictures, and then the next day I'll just do video. And sometimes that's enough. And I say, okay, I can just relax the rest of the trip. I don't have to worry about it. So my strategy has always been compartmentalize. So maybe I'm just going to work on Twitter for like an hour, and I'll go through and follow the hashtag really, really closely and retweet people and do that for a while. And then I'm going to listen to some sessions, and I'm just going to pick up stuff and maybe write down some notes and tweet that later, or maybe I won't. But I could just enjoy the session. And sometimes an hour later, I say, you know what? That thing that somebody said an hour ago, that was the best thing I heard today. So I'll do like a post around that. So you kind of have to sometimes back up a little bit and not be just producing, but just listen and sort of feel out and process a little bit what really resonates. Because what do you come back to? I sort of did one of those posts that I wrote from the conference last year was the two best things that I saw at the conference. And it didn't hit me until I was on the plane what the two best things I saw. One of them I was like, yes, that's it. But another one I had to really, what does that do? Why is that? What? Who else would want that? And so sometimes it takes a little bit to understand why something resonates.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, you're not just there to just work on social media and interview people. You're also coming as a speaker. Can you share with the folks that are either watching live or that see this archive or see one of the little cuts that we make for social media to tell this interview story in bite-sized pieces? Tell folks about the talk that you're giving at Project Voice and give us a little insight in terms of why people should put that on their calendar and make sure that they listen and come attend your talk during the event.
So I'm giving a talk about marketing and discoverability of your skill. So once you've produced your skill, what's next? How do you not only let people know that it exists, but also keep them coming back? And so I'm going to be exploring some case studies, and one of the case studies that I'm going to be talking about is McDonald's. McDonald's launched a skill a few months back so that people could apply for jobs using their Amazon Echo devices. And that was a really big deal that week, right? And they was everywhere, like, this is a new thing. And we talked about it, and then, like, what happened? We never talked about it again, right? It fell off on a cliff. So even McDonald's, company with billions of dollars behind it, has the same issue with discoverability. Okay, they know how to get it on people's minds, but how do you keep it on people's minds so that they keep coming back to it? That's the real crux of the issue. So that's what I'm going to be talking about is strategies, a really holistic view, so that it's not just, well, I'm a developer, I built the skill, now everyone should come, but recognizing that effort has to go in order to keep people coming back day after day or week after week, whatever you determine is as often as they should come, so that they keep getting value from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you do quite a bit of public speaking. It's not just a Project Voice. It's one of the things that you provide to your network is your ability to communicate. A lot of times it's about doing things like, how do you do Instagram stories, or in this case, how do you market through these new devices? So tell me about your availability going into 2020. Are you looking for more opportunities to speak at events like Project Voice?
I am. So I'm really looking for opportunities where I can either talk about Instagram and teach audiences how to use all the new features and things that they keep adding to the Instagram platform that I talk about on my flash briefing every single day. And the second thing is really some of the work that I've done to build an audience on the Amazon Echo platform, and how people can do the same exact thing to build an audience for themselves. If they're knowledgeable about a topic and they want to learn how to build an audience of super fans and how to keep them engaged on a platform that no one else is really using yet because it's still too new, that's really what I want to teach audiences how to do.
That's great. So I hear you often use 80s and 90s movie references when you speak. So if Project Voice was a movie from the 80s or 90s, what movie would it be?
That is a really good question.
You were not ready for that question. Okay, so if you
I was not ready for that moment. No, hold on. If we can get together, some of the people who are speaking, and we can make our own breakfast club, we're in the library and they're doing the dance and the guys are on the top of I would love to see that. If you are going to be at Project Voice, let's get together and make our own version of that breakfast club song, because I think that would be hilarious.
I like that. So you heard it here first from Daniel Hill. Project Voice could be like Breakfast Club. If only you'll join me in a cafeteria, rocking out to some music, being a little anarchist, but loving.
That's what I like.
Build a community and be memorable. If there's one thing that will be true about Project Voice that is similar to the movie Breakfast Club, it is that it will be memorable. And just like with Breakfast Club, you may not remember every single thing that all the actors and actresses said, but you remember how you felt. And in the same way, you will remember how you feel when you're around this community of people that are building great tech and pushing forward this industry. And it's so much more than a new technology. And so as we end this interview, Daniel, I invite you to share any final thoughts on the voice tech industry and the reason why you find passion and excitement and enthusiasm collaborating with all these people.
I think it's a really interesting opportunity to do more with technology while giving us a chance to keep our heads up and engage one-on-one and have face-to-face interaction, so we're not buried in our screens. That's a really interesting evolution for me, and I'm really curious to see how this evolution continues as it's more hands-free technology and we can do more while still engaging with that technology.
Yeah. Daniel, thank you for joining me for this pre-event interview for Project Voice. Thank you for your desire to come and partner with Bradley and the team at Voice First Events to provide even more value to the people that will be attending. I look forward to seeing you in January, and hope you have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's holiday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ian.
Yes.